Okay. Welcome to The Real and the Woo. I'm your host, Laurie Stern, and I'm back with my wonderful friend, Rama Krishnan. And she and I decided to get together a little more informally this time around. So you probably won't hear any intro music. We might not even break for joy on the fives, even though I'm in total joy just being here with you now. But she and I were having a conversation about the state of the world and knowing her like I do and how helpful she is for me personally when I'm going through periods of fear and uncertainty. I thought having this conversation with you might help other people feeling the same. So thank you for coming on today, and let's go.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to have this conversation. Let's go.
Yeah, let's help the people by helping ourselves. So, how are you feeling?
It depends on the day.
Yeah.
Depends on the day. But on one hand, of course, like everybody else, I'm having this deep concern for what's happening.
Hmm.
But, and then I remind myself of what I always have shared and I deeply believe that whatever the situation we are in, whether it's the deeply personal or the collective, we chose to be here at this
Hmm.
time.
Yeah.
This is not an accident. You've heard me talk about this for years. Birth is not an accident. Nothing is an accident, whether we came in joyfully or we came in kicking and screaming.
Yeah.
One way or another, we are here because we said yes to this experience. So after those bouts of concern, I always go back to, okay, what can I do to shift my own energy? And because of the work I do, how can I make a difference in the world through what I am doing? So, yeah, so that's where I am on the, brink between that tight rope between fear and possibility.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that. And, some of us who came in kicking and screaming or came in blissfully, I'm finding a lot of us are kicking and screaming now, right?
Yeah,
So, and just, I think I might have said this in a blog or on another episode, the idea that we did choose to be here, if that's what we believe, which is, of course, we believe, boy, that pisses me off too. It's like, seriously, I chose this stuff, and of course, yes, we did. And so it's both a responsibility and silliness, right? It's like a profound responsibility to understand that we chose to be here now. And then what are we supposed to do with that? Right. So if we're aware of it, then the next question would be now what to do with it. And
right. Now,
so,
what to do with it?
right. So do you have any advice?
Yeah, of course. I mean, yeah. So there's always that period of victimhood
Hmm.
that we go through, whether it's in our personal life or in the, like when we have a difficulty in our personal life. I know that for many years I was thinking I'd go back to India. I thought we came here for some time, and when we moved here, it was my understanding, my husband and I, that we would stay here for a few years and then return to India. So after those first few years were over, I was just itching to go back. I want to go back. I want to go back. And several years were spent in that resistance
Mm.
to being here, in the victimhood of how, miserable I was, all those stories I had told myself. And then slowly over a period of many years and many conversations with my husband, not necessarily all very nice and polite, somewhere like,
We're human.
yeah, and coming to realize, no, this is it. I'm not going back to India. I'm going to have to live out my life here. And then to come into that place of, and if I tell myself, he made me do it, then I'm a victim. But if I decide, as I used to go to India, and I had someone there who was very talented in reading Akashic records. And he read my records and he said, this lifetime, it's going to be there. And you chose it that way. So then coming back and thinking, if I chose this, what's my most empowered way of dealing with this particular situation, right? So then I began to think about, okay, then I will bring to the world what I know, and that's how I created Full Bloom Lotus. And as they say, the rest is history. You see?
Mm,
So moving to so the idea of I created this is really a very Eastern concept. And of course, later on, now you have Your Soul's Plan by Robert Schwartz, who is one of my favorite authors, and many others who have said, no, at a cellular level, we do plan this. This is
mm,
not an Eastern concept. They just got to it first. You
right.
see, that we really do. So then the question comes, what do I need to do? So it might be, let me not listen to what everybody is saying. Let me gather the facts myself. Let me understand what's going on. Let me figure things out. And ask myself, where do I stand on issues? This is like really in reinventing your own wheel,
Hmm.
Chakra.
Hmm.
I think
Yeah.
that becomes our responsibility for each one of us to kind of I've got to do this on my own here.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. I woke up this morning, as I often do, with a vision, and the vision this morning was the kaleidoscope. The tube you look in,
Yeah,
and you twist it. Um, and I feel like, and I know there's so many of us who are looking through this beautiful kaleidoscope with all of the colors and able to see not just a myriad of angles, but like you're describing, reasons why we're here and that we chose to be here. And so that is quite comforting, as maddening as it can be at times. It is a comfort to know there's a plan. And then sometimes the lens in which we're viewing is so narrowly focused, we
yeah,
can't see the other colors.
yeah.
And then when you're meeting somebody on the street who's looking through their kaleidoscope with that narrow view, then it becomes really difficult to even try to have a conversation, even a moderate meeting of the minds. And I find myself stuck in so much anger this time around with this administration, thankfully working with you the first time around. And I still believe, people like our current president um, is here to show us the way of how we can be better than what we're being given or shown. But the word shown this time around seems to be so much more charged because of the way the media's been distorted, and or the way we get our information is being distorted or reduced. And so just what you said, like how, if we're meant to find our own path and discern for ourselves, the I guess the earthbound fear right now in this moment is, how do we even know the information available to us is accurate? And then the opinions on which we are moving forward
Right,
might not even be on, it's like a shaky, wobbly table. So
right.
that's a whole new place to be in.
Yes.
And so I think that's part of why we wanted to talk about this too. Like,
Yeah.
so what do we do with that? When we're trying to
Oh,
be just trying to wake up in the morning and do our thing
right.
and figure some stuff out.
Yeah.
But what we're basing those things on isn't so certain anymore.
Yes, absolutely. Right. So, again, I think that it becomes a time for each one. This I really is, I think, is a time for each one of us to know ourselves better than we've ever done before.
Hmm.
Because when you start to understand the problem that is on the outside is is happening, and the solution is not going to come from the outside. It's going to come from the inside. It's going to come from all of us digging deep. All of us, I was just thinking the other day, in one of my flights of fantasy, I was just thinking, wouldn't it be great if somebody who had tons of resources created a place where we could go to, like the Wikipedia, a
Hmm.
place that we could go to for facts. Someone who took the time to find out from the original resource that we could trust and
Mhm.
we could go to. And then I was thinking, who would create such a database? I don't know. Maybe we will, each one of us, look at one issue that bothers us
Mm.
and take the trouble of going down to search for the truth, even if we know that the truth may not be what we want to see.
Mm.
We are
Yeah,
also afraid of what it might reveal.
right.
And I think this is the problem. We are all sticking to, news items we want to hear, opinions we like, because deep down there is a lot of fear in us. And unless we come to a place of tremendous courage within ourselves, the courage to look for answers, the courage to listen and face the truth, no matter where that takes us,
Mhm.
because these sources are thriving because of scaredy cats like us.
Oh yeah. Um, yeah, 100%. And, just like what you said, like Wikipedia, like I assume it's accurate, but of course somebody made it. Who's that somebody? I don't know. Um, and and then I do other research and other. So the way I go at it is I talk to people like you. I read a variety of things. I listen to a variety of things. And then I know for me, and this is what you're touching on, and I'm so glad in terms of how we do this internal work and what I learned from you and what I encourage my clients to do is where does that information literally hit you inside your body? Does it feel, do you get a
Bingo.
warmth in your heart? Is it revved up in your head? Do you get wigged out? And the more we can learn our own body language, the
Bingo.
better off the barometer of truth for each of us becomes, right? But
Yes.
we have to know and get quiet enough to really pay attention. It's, like, what do you want to do when you want to lose 50 pounds? You hire a nutritionist and you keep a food journal, right?
Yes.
And if you really looked at what you're eating every day, then you get a picture. And in that same way, I guess what you're saying too is, or I'm saying it now, if we kept an information journal for just a couple of days, where are we getting that from and how does it feel in our body? Then we'd begin to build that dictionary pretty quickly to know, I don't know where I got this from, but I know how it feels for me. And therefore, it's my truth, right?
Yes, and let me work with your analogy. Okay,
Yeah,
I love analogies, you know
me
that.
too.
So when I work with your analogy of if I want to lose weight, I keep a food journal. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Then I also look at what are the triggers that make me eat?
Yes.
What emails, what messages, what spots on Instagram make me reach for the cookie jar?
Hmm.
So, in the same way, we all have to understand that when we get a bit of news that triggers us, okay? And this is where, I am so passionate about doing inner child work
Hmm.
because I do believe that when some news triggers us on the outside, we must go down to where it might hit at some place in ourselves that has not been healed. You see? So another person who is triggering me, there's a line in my book where I say people in the trigger view mirror are closer to you than you might realize.
Yes, I love that.
You know? So
Say that
people,
again. Say that
yeah,
again.
people in your trigger view mirror are closer to you than you know.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So when somebody triggers us, instead of going out there and saying resist and getting angry and reactive, I do understand that our first human reaction is to be reactive.
Hmm.
It is anger, it is outward because we think the threat comes from outside. It is, I'm not saying it's not. And our knee jerk reaction is to go and strike somewhere in the outside. But giving ourselves time to recover and before we respond in the world outside, to ask ourselves, why am I so triggered by this? What in me is hurting from this? Where is it that something in me needs greater awareness? One of the things I say in my classes is don't believe everything you feel.
Mm,
You see,
hmm
our feelings are information, but that information needs closer examination. We can't just think that my feelings might tell me this person is the villain. I need to say something really harsh to this person, right? That you've just the information, the emotion is real, but the emotion, what it's telling you, may not always be true.
hmm
It feels real, it is real, it feels personal, but there is a step that we need to take. Why am I taking this so personally? What does this remind me of? Maybe this reminds me of something that happened to me when I was in fourth grade,
hmm
when something similar happened to me, and that part has not yet been set to rest yet. When I set that to rest, then I come from a healthy place. I'm not coming from my past unhealed trauma. I'm coming from a healthy place where I might then respond with awareness, with responsibility, and with intention.
hmm Yeah, that's such a huge word. Okay, so we're agreeing on this, and I want to keep going down this path with you because when you said, I love the trigger view mirror, and I forgot that I read that. So when we go down that path of the trigger, let's just follow this thread for a moment. Even how we're triggered is different, right? So some of us,
Yes,
when we're triggered, get completely shut down or in fear or in rage or in anger, right?
yes,
So the key is also to know, is it triggers in general that create this response within me, or is it specific types of triggers that create, fear, and then those other ones create this and those other ones create that. So keeping a log, a journal truly of how many different triggers are there for me and in what situations do they crop up? And then learning from you, of course, and I say this to my students, thank you very much. We're not our emotions and we're not our thoughts. We do feel as though we are, and we get pulled in those directions, of course, because we're human. But just as you said, if we can just take that pause, notice, I'm in this energy right now. Let me figure out why and then what else to do about it and how, right? So that's so important. But I feel like we as a collective are in such a raw state that we have forgotten we're more in charge than we think we are. Even just to take charge of ourselves and our own reactions, we've become so reactive. And that's been so hard to see. And it's a really hard place from which to try to collaborate and come to some sort of reaching across the aisle to try to just get along. Everyone seems to be so stuck in their self-righteousness, which is a huge
yeah,
trigger for me. Um, and that's really hard to move from.
yeah. That self-righteousness. I hear you, and I know exactly what you're talking about. And I
Yeah.
think that this, you know, this shows us that whenever there is so much self-righteousness, or where I feel like there are two ends of this. There's one self-righteousness and there's victimhood.
hmm
You know, in both of these cases, we have really veered away from our true identity as divine beings having the human experience. We believe we have the experience defines us. You see, we have lost our identity, and I really feel that all of these struggles that we are going through right now, um, if you remember, I have shared in class and in my book this story that is there in Hindu mythology that I just love so much, where, the story goes that a long time ago, the gods and the demons, They wanted the nectar of immortality.
Mm,
And the nectar of immortality was, had been hidden at the bottom of the ocean. So, Supreme Spirit said to the gods and the demons, if you want the nectar of immortality, you have to churn the ocean. You see, you have to churn the ocean.
mm,
So they found a mighty snake, a mighty mythical snake whose name is Vasuki. And Vasuki was the snake, and with the gods on one side and the demons on the other, they churned the ocean to bring up the nectar of immortality. For me, that image and that story, I feel, is a metaphor for what is happening. You know, that nectar of immortality that's going to come
mm,
from the churning, that's going to be the truth of who we are,
mhm,
knowing ourselves as universal consciousness, knowing ourselves as spirit. That's the nectar of immortality. And when I think about the demons and the gods, I don't think of them, I just think of the two polarities,
mhm,
light and darkness, left and right, Republicans, Democrats,
mhm,
4 years of them, 4 years of us, 4 years of them, 4 years of us. We are in for a long time. We are going to be churning.
mhm.
But I do believe that if we can do that churning more intentionally, then we would get to it faster.
This is incredible, and there's no accidents. I was just listening to a woman had become part of my ritual in the morning, Jeanette Biro, and she was saying how spirit is showing her that instead of the flipping of the coin, it's just what you're saying. Like in my mind, I was visualizing like just a straight tug of war between us and them, us and them, us and them. And she was like, yeah, we're not there anymore. A lot of us are able to do that so quickly that it becomes spin. And that's just what you said. So if we push, and it starts to churn. And what I say in classes too, I probably got this from you, I don't even know, but it's like when we use our ujjayi breath and we move our bodies or whatever it is, we shake up what needs to be shaken so it's like mining for gold, right? So what do they go to the river and they shake, and what's left are the golden nuggets, just like you said, the immortality. And so we are in the shake right now, and that's not comfortable, right? And so what I've learned from you so much is to be okay with not being okay. Um, and a lot of people aren't, and they're really suffering because they don't have teachers and they don't know where to go with their discomfort. And I
Yes,
know enough to know now too, when people are in discomfort, they want to identify whose fault it is, and then they want that person or those people to stop making them uncomfortable versus what you've said at the beginning. Take a good look in the mirror yourself because you're the one making yourself uncomfortable. Um,
exactly.
and that's been really terrible to witness too. It's the blame game. I feel bad, so I know I don't want to feel bad. So whose fault is it? And they need to stop doing that so I feel better.
Right, so true,
Yeah,
so true.
yeah.
Yeah, and Pema Chodron in her books and her teachings, and so much respect for her wisdom. She talks about, how we are all, giving in to this wiring of pursue pleasure, avoid pain.
Hmm.
And she says, as long as you give in to this wiring of pursue pleasure, avoid pain, which is the human condition, as long as you give in to this, we are going to continue to contribute to the polarization on the planet. You see? So if I can be a little uncomfortable with, the discomfort of listening to what you say, even though your views may be very different from mine,
Hmm.
right? If I can cultivate in myself the courage, the resilience, the compassion, the steadfastness to stay the course and listen to an opposite opinion and respond to it thoughtfully, respectfully. kindly. Somewhere I am going, taking the whole planet, I myself in this moment, because I do believe we are deeply connected to each other, and in my making that choice to stay the course of an uncomfortable conversation in a space of mutual respect, somewhere I have led all of humanity one step closer to ending the polarities.
Mm.
And I feel that, the yogic practices, from the yogic tradition, which is all the breath work, the asana work, the meditation, the self awareness, all of these practices were really to enable us to cultivate that courage, that resilience, that capacity to tolerate the uncertainty
Mm.
of the moment. You see, and when we don't practice that and we stay in that reactionary place of pursue pleasure, avoid pain, we are actually adding to the polarity.
Right.
We're actually reinforcing it.
Hmm. Yeah. It wasn't really until this week that I um, got really stuck, and I'm still feeling that way. And I know part of it is, you can call it the full moon. I can call it the full moon. The eclipse is coming up. I do believe that energetically that does have an effect. I
Oh,
also
yeah.
have
Oh,
a
yeah.
trip coming up um, this weekend, and that's a whole other thing. And I think that's churning up some things. So I'm kind of just trying to sit with, what is this? Is this mine? Why is this here? But I found myself getting so angry this week to just, I'm just going to call a spade a spade. Okay. There's people that voted for this current president, and I'm friends with them because of Israel. And that was their only reason for voting for him. And then there's people who voted for this current president because all they care about is securing our borders. Okay. There's people that voted for this president for one reason, whatever that reason is, or a variety of them, just like people chose to vote for the other side for the same thing. And I just want people to stand up sometimes and say, yeah, you know what? I voted for him because of this one issue, but I'm real pissed off about all this other stuff. And I'm just fascinated by the lack of honesty in it's like your statement, throwing the baby out with the bathwater keeps coming up. It's like they voted for the baby and they don't like all the bathwater, but they're unwilling to throw out even just a couple buckets of it. And that's making me really mad. And I'm fascinated by my anger, wondering where that's from. And I think it's like a definitely an inner child, like, that's not
Yeah.
fair. That's not fair. Like, they're not being
Yeah, that's
honest.
not fair.
They're
Yes.
not being
Yes.
honest. And that's making me mad. Right. And so, no
Yeah.
matter why you voted for somebody, can't we just all say, I'm a little shocked that all this other stuff is going on? Unless, and I know there's plenty of people that believe wholeheartedly in the entire agenda, that's fine. But for those of us who don't believe wholeheartedly in the entire agenda, why can't we say, I don't agree? What's the harm in that?
Yeah.
And that's what I'm finding so frustrating.
Yeah, but you know what, Laurie? It runs both ways. Just as we are saying about another, people who voted differently from us, how can you be blind to what's going on,
Mhm.
Um, in the same way, because I know someone, I mean, as you know, I see people privately too. And in one of my private sessions, I have someone who I'm very fond of, have tremendous respect for, have seen the growth over the years, who has voted the other way. And recently, in a conversation, the question that was asked of me was, I'm willing to say that, but are you willing to say this is there is this going on that actually is a good thing?
Mhm.
And I realized how difficult it was for me to acknowledge that something is working,
Hmm.
and how difficult it was for that person to acknowledge that the, as I said to this person, I said, the means do not just, the end does not justify the means,
Mm.
you know? It just you want to get to some place, it doesn't, you can't get there ham-handedly. It has
Hmm.
to be done intentionally, with kindness, with awareness, with responsibility.
Right.
You can't just go from point A to point B because point B looks like a great place to be.
Right.
You know,
Right.
the you have to be aware. So then I realized that these conversations are not easy, and that there are parts in me too
Hmm.
that are scared that if I gave this person an inch, they would take a yard. So
Mm.
I'm not going to give them even the smallest victory.
And that's what I find so difficult to witness right now
Yeah.
because people, at least the people that I know and respect, used to be those kinds of people. And it's almost like they've been body snatched on either side. So stringent and inflexible.
Yes.
And like I said, like it was before, like, I'm just gonna, that's what they're doing. That's okay. But for whatever reason this week, I'm just like, it's not okay. Can't you just say, yeah, I believe everything and everything's going to be great and everything is going to be great because there's a plan and we don't know what the plan is and we don't know what the definition of great is. But I feel like if we could just get back to a little bit more of a little bit of the give and take, then
Yes.
we'd be a lot better. And I'm
Yes.
hopeful that that's where we're moving to, that we've just like
Yes.
I learned from you, like, the polarities take us in either direction to the extreme.
Yes.
And little by little, hopefully we learn to find our balance. I
Yeah.
just, for whatever reason, I'm feeling so aware more than ever of the extremes in a really sad way. It's making me sad as it's
Yeah,
making me
yeah,
mad.
it is
Yeah.
sad. And by the way, that sadness that you are feeling is real, and we need to be able to unpack it, understand it, and address it. You see, the sadness comes because ultimately, in a country, we it's a country is like a larger family.
Hmm.
You see? And when there's a split in the family, there is sadness
Mm.
because there's a disconnect from members of the family. And when we allow ourselves to move from our head to our heart, and one of my teachers who has done a lot of work in this is Anodia Judith, and
Mm.
she always talks about moving from the love of power to the power of love,
Hmm.
you know and I think that that is the shift that we are being called to take, but we are so stuck in fear that we are not moving towards that. We are
Hmm.
holding on to our love of power because of being in the grip of fear ourselves, for which again you come back to, why is inner child work important?
Yeah.
Unless you heal. So, I don't know whether you listened to that recent podcast. I was listening to the podcast by Gavin Newsom.
Mm.
I am Gavin Newsom. It's a recent, he just came out with this podcast.
Oh.
Yeah. And he is in conversation with Mark Kirk, who's the leader of one of the leaders, young leaders of the MAGA movement,
Mm.
and they are in conversation. And I listened to the entire podcast and I thought, this is really great because
Mm.
as I was listening to the podcast, there were points where I was cringing, you know, and I noticed I was cringing.
Hmm.
So when I'm cringing and I notice it, I pause the recording, you know, and I'm examining my cringe because it is revealing where I am polarized,
Hmm.
where my identity is wrapped into a belief that I am holding so close to my identity that I do not want it taken from me. I do not need my belief shaken or questioned.
Hmm.
So that's why my body is cringing. So I had to stop and I had to say to myself, no, let that go. That's not who you are. You are a divine being having the human experience, and that human experience needs you to honor another's human experience.
Okay. So, yes. And how, without identifying necessarily your personal story of where you were triggered or why, when we find ourselves in those moments, do you have some recommendations on how to, because you and I can get quickly back to that balance of, okay, this is my human suit. I need to put back on my divine suit, right? And
I
that, of
like that.
course, provides comfort immediately. And some people listening out there might be like, well, that's just putting your head in the sand and pretending things aren't shitty. No, it's what you're saying is I'm taking my power back, the power of love versus the love of power. But when we're able to, like, I love that you brought up this podcast because just even saying the name Gavin Newsom, people are gonna be like, I'm never listening to that. Or the other name that you said, I'm never listening to that. And okay, and they're gonna make that choice. And I'm not mad at those people. I don't, that's fine. I'm so clear. But it's the others and myself too. So it's like, so if you can give us some advice, I guess, which is why I wanted to talk to you too, is just in this situation, we are all triggered
Yeah,
and powerlessness comes in to play with how is any of this going to get better before it gets a lot worse. And again, that's out of our control. So when everything is out of our control, even, you know, of course we can vote and blah, blah, but then we're stuck with that for 4 years, whatever that is. So then half of us feel like we're out of control.
yeah,
So what do we do with that? If you have any advice, selfishly, I want to know,
yeah.
because I want to know, hopefully somebody else out there wants to also, if you don't mind.
Yes, yes, absolutely. So, I think it's important for us to remember who we are. This is the work that we cannot escape doing. And that is the inner work of centering ourselves. You see, I had this, and I'll tell you by this example, you'll understand what I mean. So I had this conversation. So I have a cousin in India who was posted for some years on an assignment to the US. And he was living, for some time he was in Texas, then he was in Arkansas. Now, once in a while, my cousin would call me, and he was there in the US for about, I don't know, 6 years, and now he's gone back to India. Now, this cousin and I, we grew up together, and I'm very close to him. And he's much younger, and I played with him when he was a kid, changed his diaper. So I almost see him as a kid brother, and very fond of him. So once in a while, he would call me. And then the 2016 elections were all happening, and one day when he and I were talking, I realized that he is having, he's a very much of a Republican and very much of, believing in those things. And I realized where I am surrounded by, I mean, in Illinois and these kind of ideology. And there was a point in our conversation where it was very awkward because he said something and I didn't respond for a long pause. And then he said, "Oh, I forgot you are in Illinois."
Mm-hmm.
And he quickly changed the topic. Anyway, and then the conversation ended. But after I hung up from that conversation, I thought about it for a long time. I thought that's so interesting. Both of us don't are not born and raised here. You see, we were born and raised in India. My husband's work led me to Illinois. His projects led him to a Republican state.
Mm-hmm.
We have the opinions of, had I been there, I might have been that. Had
Mm-hmm.
he been here, he might have been this.
Mm-hmm.
And that really shifted how strongly polarized I was. I began to remember that there was a time when I was neither Republican nor Democrat.
Mm-hmm.
There was a time when I didn't know any of these American history, politics, right?
Hmm.
There was a time when I was just this other person. And then destiny brought me here,
Hmm.
and destiny brought him there, right? Remembering who I was before all of these things happened really helped me to understand that there are just two viewpoints, and so many of us aligned in a certain way because of the environment, the stories, the experiences, the side of the coin that we are able to see.
Right. Whether
You see?
it's, location, religion,
Yes,
gender, whatever it is, it's all
right?
conditioning. It's all
It's
external conditioning.
conditioning.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that, so coming back to your question about what advice, I would say we all need to remember who we were before we were born on this planet.
Well, yes.
Right? We were not born Democrat or Republican. We were
No.
not born, you know,
Male,
this or
female,
that.
whatever,
We,
I might
we,
have been a dragonfly before.
exactly. You see, so we are that undivided consciousness that is being given these two choices. And I always say this, I say that beggars can't be choosers, and choosers cannot be beggars.
Mm.
Choosers will not be victims. Choosers. So when I remember my identity as the chooser, and I realize I am making this choice, another person is making this choice, but we are both ultimately choosers.
Mhm.
We are not defined by the choices. We are making a certain choice. If I was here, I'd probably make this choice. If I was born there, I'd probably make that other choice. But at the deepest level, we are just human beings. We are just people. And we all
Yeah.
want the same thing. We have
Well,
more in common.
we hope we all want the same thing, which
We do.
is,
We do want joy.
survival and
We do want our
safety
children.
and
How we get
security.
there, we might think is different.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And I think, just talking to you also, there will always be certain people who chose to be here, whether they recognize it or not, as appearing to be never moving off their lane, never moving out of their lane. And they're here to show us just what you said, that we do have a choice if we're aware of that, right? So it's like Tamas and Rajas and Sattva, right? So people who are just on the one level versus another, and they don't ever move. Okay, thank you, right?
Right.
And
Yeah,
yeah, and
since you brought tamas, rajas, and sattva into the conversation, I
our
just want
friends.
to let's just lean into that wisdom that you
Yeah.
just brought about the three stages of evolution that the Gita talks about, right?
Hmm.
One is when you're choosing blindly. I don't know. I don't watch the news. I'll just vote
Right.
whatever everybody
Because I
says.
live in Illinois or I live in Texas. I'm just going to
Exactly.
vote that way. Exactly.
I'm just, yeah. So that's
Yeah. Or
blindly.
my parents told me to.
Or my parents told me, right.
Right.
Then in Rajas, it's like, no, this is the stand, and I am taking this stand, and I am my choice.
Hmm.
We make it our identity, right? So
Hmm.
while it's a little better than than sleepwalking through life, we become militant. We become like, completely one with with our choice.
With the
And we
identity, right?
forget and we
Yeah.
judge. We judge people who are not making the same choice. And this is the place where hate and anger is born.
Because of fear and self-righteousness and all the things that, like you said, no one's allowed to tell me who I'm not, right? Or who
Yeah.
I am. And yeah, so go on. So then the
Yeah,
third.
then in the third one, and all of the teachings say that lasting solutions will come when we move from the second to the third stage. And in that third stage, we remember who we are, we remember who the other person is. And because we have mutual respect, we will sit and listen. We will collaborate. We will listen to different opinions. And we will, over a period of, I don't know, 100, 200 years, or hopefully less,
Hmm.
um, figure out a way to combine and work together. You know,
Hmm.
um, nobody gets everything, everybody gets something.
Right.
That kind of collaboration negotiation that is possible only through mutual respect. And when we have that mutual respect and we are able to convey to each other what we hold dear to our hearts, then we are all going to work towards a common goal where how we get there also matters.
Yeah. Well, in the recognition of looking at another being at a soul level. Um, Hello, my dog. Did you hear my dog just, hi. Speaking of soul level, right? She wanted to add to the conversation. I'm here too, she said. We're all the same. You know, it's hard. It's hard. I see people in tremendous pain and anger, understandably, for the inexplicable horror that some human beings have inflicted on others. And that's really hard, right? To not say, I agree, people are awful and that should never happen, because of course people are awful and that should never happen. And the hardest thing learning from you is to even recognize those monsters, whoever those monsters are, their souls also. And maybe their value is to show us how better we are than that. But I know that also puts us on a pedestal of some kind, which that's, so that we go down those, it's hard, right? To say, to label somebody else as evil means I'm putting myself in the not evil category,
Yeah,
which is
no,
not the point. The point is
yeah,
we're all humans,
yeah,
and the roles that we play are in this experience that we're sharing.
yeah,
So I don't know if I'm explaining that or how to
yeah,
help people move from that, right? And like you said, it might take a couple hundred years,
yeah.
but hopefully not.
And if you look at it from a very high perspective, these cycles have always happened in human history, and we as human beings like to think that we will come to a time when it will never happen. And so we are a little shocked when we say, oh my God, I never thought that we would ever go back. Why, But actually, history does repeat itself because um, personal history or external history will repeat itself because consciousness has not shifted,
Mm,
and unless consciousness shifts, we are going to be doing this over and over again,
right.
right?
Well, I love how you describe too, like we as individuals have come here and are meant to learn lessons and hopefully change the karma and cut the cord so that the lineages to follow don't have to repeat the same lessons. And in that same way, the earth as a body is doing the same thing. So Mother
Yeah,
Earth is also earthquaking and shaking, right?
yeah,
She's shaking because she's in the churn also. And so it's
yeah,
like we're all in this together, but
yeah.
it does churn up quite a lot.
It does.
Yeah.
It does churn up quite a lot. And I think that what we can do, you, I, all of us, can do, first of all, as I told you, this centering ourselves in who we truly are. And that's where meditation comes into play, reminding ourselves that this is an experience I signed up for. So I better do the work of healing myself, because when I am healthy, when I am in a better frame of mind, I actually contribute to everybody.
Mhm.
Okay, if I am coming from a wounded place myself, then I am part of the problem and not part of the solution, right? So taking care of ourselves. In fact, I think I told you I am offering a 21-day violet flame meditation free for everyone that starts next week. And hoping that, so the violet flame, for example, that's supposed to be the highest, the color violet is supposed to be the highest on the spectrum. And it's supposed to be a meditation that invites all the archangels, the keepers of the planet, and invites their energies to help us to make planetary shifts. You see, bringing the energy down. And I'm doing this because I've been thinking that the more of us who bring this energy into this play and invite it, we are going to do this. Somebody else might do something else. Different rituals from different traditions can. All of us have to understand that in participating in the collective good, we are meeting the purpose for which we chose to be born at this time.
Mm.
You know, we cannot pray for the destruction of our enemies because the enemy is as much in myself as it is outside,
Right.
right? I have to pray for the transformation of ignorance into knowledge.
Mm.
That's the only thing of, fear into love. These deep transformations that I envision in myself, pray for in myself, pray for in the collective. These kind of prayers, these kind of inner work, these kind of intentions sow the seeds for a new future.
That's beautiful. Uh, and may it be so.
Maybe so.
May it be so. I want to thank you for that. And I have one question about that because as you were saying that, and I write about this a lot, when we hear something familiar, it's easier to think about someone else first, like a love song. And when you were just saying that, I pray to change ignorance to knowledge. My first thought was, I pray that those other ignorant people find knowledge. And then I'm listening to it. It's like, no, no. And myself, I pray
Interesting.
myself and my ignorance finds knowledge, right? So my hope is that even if people start with, I pray for other people to heal, that is a better vibration than praying for no one to heal.
That
And
is
then the
true.
highest
That is true.
vibration when they practice that is to say, I pray for myself to heal so that others may, just by doing my work,
Yes.
right?
Ultimately, it is, that movie Substance, right?
Mm.
Which recently was all of the,
We
Oscars
haven't
nominated.
watched it yet, but I just saw something on the Today Show. The dogs are getting so triggered, speaking of the word triggered, by that show.
Really?
Or not Substance. I'm sorry. That's a whole other show. But yes,
Okay.
the Substance.
Yeah.
Yes, we watched
So
that
the
too.
movie Substance, right?
Oh, that's a
So,
crazy,
so
that's a crazy show.
that's a crazy movie,
Yeah, it was crazy.
but there's something profound there that I was watching the movie and I was like, oh my God, this is big. And when
Yeah.
he talks about, that you are just one, the younger version of you, the older version of you.
Hmm.
That guy who's giving her that
Yeah.
substance
The
tells Demi
voice.
Moore,
Hmm.
remember that you are just one. Now she forgets that and she keeps hurting the older version of herself
Hmm.
because it's ugly, but that ends up hurting her.
Hmm.
Now you play it out in the macrocosm. We are one.
Right.
We are one. Hurting something on the other side is going to hurt us just as much.
Hmm.
We can't afford. We have to take the lessons from the movie Substance
Yeah. I
and
thought of
say,
you when I was watching that movie, just in the exact way you're saying it. And the show Severance is what was coming to mind. There's, I
Severance,
guess, I guess
yes,
the elevator bell makes the dogs
yes,
go
yes.
crazy and other things. But yeah, Substance is very profound in the way that you've taught me to
Right? We are
recognize just
one.
that exact thing. Like when we hurt ourselves, we hurt everyone. And when we pray for
Hurt
the
them.
destruction of others, we hurt everyone.
Yeah, we are as affected
Hmm.
because we are not separate. We are, the concept in from Buddhism, which I so love, the concept of the interbeing. We are, because in Christianity, you look at yourself as a divine being. But in Buddhism, there's no question of divine being. They talk about interbeing,
Mm.
which means we are always, always connected.
Mm.
We inter are. So you are in me, I am in you, right? Something, whatever I am feeling, is coming from this pool that we are all in. So
Hmm.
whatever I put into the pool is going to impact everyone in the pool, even if they're on the other side of the pool,
Right.
that, but we are in the same pool.
Yeah. So we think peeing in a big pool isn't going to affect the person on the other side of the pool, but in fact, it's still going to get there. Right. So we want to avoid peeing in our own pool.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah. Ram, oh, thank you. Is there anything else when we thought about getting together that you wanted to cover today that you feel like would be really
Um,
super helpful to the
Nothing.
collective? I'm going to let you talk about your book again and the meditation coming up, but just in terms of, do you feel like we have any unfinished business right now?
I do think that this is the no, not in terms. I think we've covered most everything.
Okay.
Of course, I'm sure, as always, I'll think of many things
Well, we can
afterwards.
do this again.
That's okay. But I do think that it is time for us to really practice the teachings,
Yeah.
really put them in. We may have studied it. Now the question is, and that's why, my classes or whatever, I am not focused on, how many books you're reading, what you're reading. No, it's time for us to get together, practice, practice. And Pema Chodron, in one of her books, she says, practice like your hair were on fire,
Mm.
because the planet needs that kind of practice right now. So I completely echo the great master's teaching. We have
Hmm.
to practice like our hair were on fire, practice being centered, practice compassion, practice in this moment, when you said, I saw myself thinking, I hope they get out of
Hmm.
ignorance, and I immediately corrected myself. That's practicing the teaching,
100%.
you
Yeah.
know, and we need to do that 100% of the time, you
Yes. We
know,
need to include ourselves in the equation,
and include
right?
others in the equation. We are one.
Exactly. I mean, but what I'm saying is we often don't include ourselves in those equations, and it has to start with ourselves. And so, in that way, you wrote a fantastic book, and I'd like you to tell everybody, remind everybody what it's called, and that you can buy it on Amazon and on your website.
Not on my website. It's yeah,
Oh,
through the Amazon. Yes,
okay.
the book is called The Yoga of Self-Love, and it's really the inner work of discovering where there might be a split inside of us, a chasm between us and our inner child, our human self, and doing the work of coming to wholeness within us, healing the past, accepting ourselves just the way we are, and making ourselves, bringing ourselves to wholeness so that we can interact with life and face the situations in our life from a place of health and wholeness instead of from a place of reactive woundedness. So that's the book. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak about it.
Of
And
course.
on March 19th, we are starting a 21-day violet flame meditation. Anyone who wants to can just go to the website and sign up, and we'll send them the link. And we will be doing these meditations to invoke the violet flame and the power of angels to bring about deep transformation in ourselves and through us, the world.
Amen.
Amen.
And the meditation, when they sign up, it's live and
It's
not
live, it's in
recorded.
the morning. It's not recorded.
Okay.
Just come in when you come in. Every morning, 8:30, we will have the meditation, and it will just be for about 15 to 20 minutes, 25 minutes.
Okay.
And we will reinforce it because I strongly believe in the power of 21-day regimens, to kind of materialize, embody an intention.
Mm.
So we will be doing that.
All right. And in terms of helping people figure out themselves, you can find either one of us. Were it not for this wonderful, amazing human in front of me, I wouldn't do what I am doing. So I always honor and thank you so much
That's
for
very
all the ways
kind.
you've taught me. And I know you've told me to go fly now and do it my way, which I am, right? So you can find me at customdesignwellness.com, find Rama at fullbloomlotus.com, and I'll put everything in the show notes. And together, all of us, we will rise. So thank
Absolutely.
you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
my friend.
Thank you for the opportunity. This was such a good conversation.
Oh, amazing.